episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to a Monday edition of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. It doesn't feel like a typical Monday because we had a show yesterday, and if you missed it, please catch up on it. It was super interesting. We had Mitch Albom, one of America's best known and most beloved authors, the author of Tuesdays with Morrie. And he has a new book out called The Little Liar, which is actually about the Holocaust. So it sort of intersected in our little world with my mother's story. And it was amazing to have an author of that caliber on STS. So please, if you haven't seen it, give it a watch. Trust me, it'll be worth your while. In the meantime, we are back and on the case of Courtney Clenney. On August 10th, 2022, the OnlyFans and Instagram model Courtney Clenney, who was 26 at the time, was arrested for second-degree murder in connection with the death of her 27-year-old boyfriend, Christian Obumseli. He is the victim here. He was stabbed to death 4 months earlier. It took about that long to arrest her. He was stabbed back on April 3rd, 2022, at the apartment the couple shared in Edgewater, and it is a small community here in Miami. I just met some friends, didn't even know they are close friends of ours, and when they were having their house redone, they were living in that condo at the same time as Courtney Clenney and her boyfriend, and they said it was a very raucous apartment in general, a lot of young people who like to party in Miami. On the day of his murder, Courtney Clenney, who goes by Courtney Tailor online, she called 911 to report that her boyfriend had been stabbed during an altercation between the two of them. But first, she called her parents, and that raised some suspicion. Best guest here today, you know him well, famed Tallahasse Defense Attorney R. Timothy Jansen. He is a partner in the firm Jansen Davis. He has handled all sorts of complex civil, administrative, and criminal litigation, and he spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor. We are supposed to be joined by a new face on Surviving the Survivor, Sue Ann Robinson. I'm hoping she does pop on. She is a lawyer and legal commentator for Court TV. She's been featured on Fox News, the Black News Channel, Young Turks, Law and Crime. The list goes on and on. I believe she started her career at like 23 years old as a prosecutor a long time ago. And then you've got Megan Sachs, last but not least. She is a full professor of criminology and the graduate program director at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Guess what state that is? New Jersey, my home state. She teaches classes including women in crime, serial killers, and crime policy. And she and her partner, Amy, partner at work, I should say, Amy, they co-host two podcasts, Women and Crime and Direct Appeal. Women in Crime and Direct Appeal. Women in Crime and Direct Appeal. So check it out. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you do by now, I have a book coming out. Someone just reached out from the UK. It is not available here till May, in the UK in July. Carm and I are having a brainstorming session with some people at the publishing house on Wednesday to figure out how to market this and how to get the word out. But Carm has read it 100 times. I've read it a few times. My wife has read it 0 times, but eventually she will. And honestly, it is. It's not about me. It's about Carm and the wisdom that she imparts, and I think that you will love it. So there you go. Tim Jansen, you told me you watched this entire hearing. Courtney Clenney was back in court, or part of the hearing, but she was back in court on Thursday. What did you glean from that court appearance? And I've got some stuff we're going to break it down.
Well, it's a mess. You got the defense lawyer, as you know, going out there making public statements, attacking the victim, mentioning that the victim was sexually assaulted as a victim. The state tried to file a document, didn't calendar it, saying we would hope we'd get the attention of the defense to stop, not to try this case in the media. And it didn't stop. Now there's apparently TMZ doing a docuseries. And then the defense responded by saying, "Hey, we have to fight this because it was a calculated press conference by the state attorney, knowing that all these documents would harm his client, that he has a right to defend and make sure his client gets a fair trial," while he's chastising the victim who can't speak for himself in the media. He really can't have it both ways. I thought his public persona, his public comments were a little over the top, crossed the line. He should be worried about the trial, and not worried about making himself look good in the media. I think the judge is probably going to rail both sides in. The state has not had any other press conferences after the original one, basically saying what the charges were and what the probable cause was. The defense objected because they're releasing discovery pursuant to Chapter 119, which is Florida law. It's public record. They're entitled to it. Some parts can be kept out, but it's Florida law requires it. So I think the judge is pretty smart. She's going to get down to it. I didn't watch the whole hearing. The defense believes they have a defense. They haven't really given all the discovery that they have, that they need to give to the state. The state's entitled to a fair trial also. They're entitled to see who all these experts are. I guess the one funny thing that came to my mind was he had this knife throwing expert, but the expert didn't have any kind of a resume or curriculum vitae to give. So they said they were going to give him this bio on the website, which I found that amusing.
The knife thrower was from the circus. They forgot to mention that. By the way, you see Analytical Blarney AB up there. Analytical Blarney AB has been steadfastly contributing to the show in the way of donating memberships. And yours truly, the Bonehead, has failed to address her as a friend of the show. So I'm making it abundantly clear right now that Analytical Blarney AB most certainly is a friend of the show, and not only a friend of the show, but a good friend of the show and a generous friend of the show. So shout out to Analytical Blarney AB. And look at this, Laura Waldy, hi Joel, best guest, best mods, and STS Nation. All that is true. The best guests, best mods, and STS Nation. I always say best guests, better community. We're looking at this photo. This is obviously from TMZ. You see the watermark, but that is a picture of Courtney Clenney the day of the murder, the day of the stabbing, on the left, juxtaposed obviously with one of her modeling shots on the right. Quite the juxtaposition. So in court this past Thursday, and this is a Miami case, and once the trial gets underway, yours truly will be heading over there. Courtney Clenney and her attorneys had to enter a guilty plea on two new charges, two new criminal charges, and they are one count of interception of wire or electronic communication, which is a third-degree felony. So we'll get to the other charge in a moment. But Megan, I know you're not the lawyer here per se, but what do you make of this, that now more charges are being slapped onto this? And it sounds like she is a complicated person, to say the very least, one with a volatile temper.
I think certainly you can glean that no matter what, draw whatever conclusions you might. There is a volatility to Courtney. This new charge has been added not only to Courtney's docket, but also her parents have been charged in connection with felony access to an unauthorized device. So some might say this is turning into a real circus. I've heard some of the comments that, this is an overreach, prosecutorial overreach. I would reserve, excuse me, I would reserve my judgment on that at this point. I can tell you, I understand as well from the defense point of view that there is some concern about what conversations might have been privileged, what might not have been privileged. I can also tell you from what I've watched that this does appear to be, or this is going to be, one of those really pure adversarial relationships in the courtroom. So, when I teach my students about the courtroom work group and the prosecution and the defense, it's always posited in, Law and Order and other shows that this is a fight, pitting one side against the other, when in reality, it's much more cooperative. However, I think this is going to be one of those cases in which you're going to see this true adversarial relationship play out. I will say the defense also has said that they have solid evidence that Courtney was a victim. I really look forward to seeing what evidence that might be.
Just a very quick programming note. Tomorrow, a lot of people have been asking Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of Ethan Crumbley, the school shooter in Michigan. She's on trial in a first of its kind case. Basically, they brought involuntary manslaughter charges against the mother. I think 4 counts for each of the deaths, and the jury is now deliberating. So we're going to have reaction tomorrow. Josh Ritter is going to be here, well-known LA-based attorney, and also Ed McGovern, who was a former lieutenant in the Hallandale Beach Police Department, but he responded to the Parkland shootings, and he has started his own software company. It's software to help prevent mass shootings at schools. So no one knows more about what happens at school shootings than Ed McGovern, and he will be here with Josh Ritter and likely one other panel member. That is going to be tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then if Tim can be here, 9 a.m. on Wednesday, Shanna Gardner is back in court, very similar to the Markel Adelson case. She is being brought up on charges of first-degree murder and the death of her husband, Jared Bridegan, and we'll be covering that, hopefully with Tim, if he can clear his own docket. Meanwhile, Laura Waldy here gifted 5 Surviving the Survivor memberships. And also a quick warning, Tim Janson's got to jump out at the top of the hour, but Megan and I will probably go a little bit longer. We'll see how we get through all of this. But so, Tim, back to you on this. So 2 new charges slapped on. One of them is one kind of interception of wire electronic communication. It's a 3rd-degree felony. And then she was also charged with 1 count of unauthorized access or excessive access to a computer for serving as a principal by breaking into her boyfriend's computer. What does this mean in English, these 2 additional charges? Obviously, she was tampering, it appears like, with evidence, as were the parents. How serious are these charges?
Well, they obviously can't prove the tampering, otherwise they would charge tampering. So what they're charging is unauthorized access. They may not be able to prove what was deleted, but by filing these charges, it puts the parent, the mother, and the father in a unique position as a defense. It also lets the jury know, right? Because what was she doing after this event? Was she really a victim of abuse and defending herself? Or was she now trying to cover up something that could have been damaging to her story? The state has the right to charge it. She committed this crime. They have probable cause, right? Because they have probable cause. They were accessing the computer when he was dead. Now, unless they have something in writing saying they can do that, they don't have the ability to do that. They're not spouses. She wasn't a spouse, I don't believe. I think they were just boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe fiance. I do agree with Megan. The state and defense lawyers don't like each other. They don't respect each other. The first comment by the defense lawyer was attacking the state. The judge was not having any of it. Said, that's it, stop. If you can't act professional, we're just going to end the hearing. And it shut him down. The state did try to stick to the facts. Oh, they were pointing their pens at him, their little jabs, but the defense lawyer took the bait and attacked the prosecutor. You can't really do that. I see that a lot of times from younger, inexperienced lawyers. Judges don't like when you attack each other. It makes their job more difficult, and it is unprofessional. But we've all been there. Someone does something that upsets you, and it's just a natural. Hopefully, the defense lawyer will stick to his arguments. He made some good arguments, and we'll see. He's throwing out there this big defense, and we've seen that before, right? We saw that in the Adelson case. They had this big defense. It was a top secret defense, and it fell flat. This one is not top secret. It's being publicized. And the prosecutor says, great, tell us what your defense is so we can properly prepare a response. 2 different kind of theories of defense, but so that's where we are.
And Tim, we've talked about it. I mean, one of the notions that the defense is floating out there is that Obum Selly, Christian, was dealing in sex trafficking, which is a serious claim to be made. So I want to follow up back with you on that. But Francine Pastena says, "Hi, Megan. Big fan of your direct appeal podcast with Amy. Followed here by Lady Gaga, who tunes in occasionally. Good evening. Wow, love the Mitch Albom interview. This case baffles me. How can she claim self-defense when we see videos of her being violent? Megan, speak to that. I mean, there is video proof out there, a couple different videos where we see her beating on this guy, and we know how he ends up. But is it possible that there was other stuff going on behind the scenes that we haven't seen go in the other direction?"
Yeah, I think, of course, there was. The information that we have so far is very damning. I mean, Clenney looks very abusive. In fact, she is physically abusing him in these videos. So I think it would be hard to dispute that. However, we don't see entire videos. We don't know what happened before or after the events. We don't see other videos that may be in existence, although I'm not sure that there are I'm not sure if there are others, to be frank. However, there is also going to be, I would say, eyewitness testimony is going to be key here. Do they have friends? Do they have people who were around them who are going to speak to the nature of their relationship and what their actions were? So I think if they're claiming that she is if they're claiming that she's a victim of abuse, they're going to have to get other people who witnessed or heard something or saw something to substantiate those claims without any video.
Hey,
And
Joel.
right now, I don't know that anyone's come forward. Go ahead, Tim.
Joe, it's really hard to claim I'm a sex traffic victim when I'm making $3.8 million in the account. Usually the victims aren't the ones getting the money. It's the pimp getting the money or the person that brings them over. They may have had a volatile relationship, right? Well, what's key in this case? What happened that day? She's getting in the elevator and they broke up, they're back together. She says, and she admits in her own interview, she threw the knife at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then they looked at her. She had no injuries. She said that he threw her against the wall. He grabbed her neck. No injuries. Took photos. She says that she threw the knife from 10 feet away. That's ridiculous. The injury, the knife went in like 6 or 8 centimeters into him. The medical examiner said it came from a downward thrust.
Mm-hmm.
That's where this case is going to be tried.
Yeah.
Everything else is all red herring. It's all he said, she said. That's what a jury is going to look at. And that's why the cops did the interview. That's why her story is completely different than the facts. And she didn't have one injury on her, not one.
Right.
And then she says she threw the knife and she held it up like you would stab down, not throw, right? So I'm curious to see who this county fair expert is on the knife. So
I am too. I have to say, I think the wound is the biggest hurdle to overcome. The idea that she threw it from a distance, I can't imagine what expert is going to support that idea based on what we already know. But I'd be very curious too. And I'd love to know what the CV is actually for a knife throwing expert.
he doesn't have one. Apparently,
Oh, that's right. Well, I'd like to know what qualifies in a court. I've seen a number of experts, and I'd be really curious to see what qualifies someone in that realm.
You know, it can be wide open. Experience alone. If you throw enough knives, you don't have to write a book. You don't have to publish a treatise.
Sure.
If you've been doing it long enough and the court finds that you can assist a jury in determining whether a fact maybe, but if he works at a fairgrounds and tossing knives, and that's going to be hard.
Right. That's a hard sell.
Peony Pink, shout out to you from Australia. I've been watching a show on Netflix called The Tourist. I bring it up for 2 reasons. It takes place in Australia. It's moved a little slow, maybe because I've been a little preoccupied. But the other thing is, it's the dude from 50 Shades of Grey, and he was in another show on Netflix, Jamie Dornan.
Mm-hmm.
Now that dude, that's a good-looking guy right there. I told my wife, if you're gonna cheat on me, you can do it with Jamie Dornan. It would be a less difficult fall for me, but it's a handsome fella, good looking leading man. And that's all I have to say about that. By the way, this photo, I brought this up for a reason. You're looking, it's interesting how different people look in prison jumpsuits, but that is Courtney Clenney right there. But the woman to her right, for all Dan Markel, Adelson, Katie Magbanoa watchers, that is Tara Kawas, who's on the very right-hand corner. And that, I think, is of interest to people who are watching this. Quick hello here. I think she is on. We've got Sue Ann Robinson. I introduced you at the beginning. Sue Ann, you hearing us okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Sue Ann, for those who missed it, is a lawyer and legal commentator for Court TV. She's been featured on everything, including Fox News, the Black News Channel, the Young Turks, Law and Crime. The list goes on. And I think she was a prosecutor at 23 years old, so she's been at it for a while, if I read that correctly. Just curious, Sue Ann, we're a little ways in here. The fact now we're just getting to the parents being arrested. How does that change the dynamic of this case, in your opinion?
I think the parents being arrested changes the dynamic for Courtney, because now she's in the position where things that she's done is now affecting her parents. I also think that the prosecution is being very smart because, as I've discussed before on other platforms, we have to remember that she was not brought in initially. She was out free, doing her thing, still posting on Instagram, kind of living her life. And she was later brought in after her parents had to hire legal counsel to essentially investigate the case and put pressure on the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office to do further investigation. And that's when the other videos came out. That's when more evidence came out that pointed the finger at Courtney. So keeping that in mind, I'm sure that based on the parents' conversations with Courtney initially, they took a certain position, whether it be to call legal counsel, whether it be to give her advice, etc. But part of their counsel, or part of what they did at the time, included removing items from the apartment that they shared. So that's why they're in the hot seat now. If they were assisting her, got her an attorney, kind of said, hey, do whatever the lawyer says, and stepped away, that would be different. I think they put themselves in the hot seat when they actually actively started involving themselves by allegedly removing an item from the apartment that they shared, which later became evidence.
And Sue Ann, just so you know who you're talking to, it is Megan Sachs, who is a criminology professor out of New Jersey, and Tim Jansen, Tallahassee's famed criminal defense attorney. Megan, back to you. You know, you study what goes on inside some of these killers' minds and or their families. How rare is it, or not rare is it, for parents to be dragged into a situation? Records are now showing that many of his belongings, Christian's belongings, were taken from the apartment by unknown people, as they put it. We don't know if that was the parents at the time, but those belongings were provided to the family. But how rare is this for the parents to get themselves involved in a criminal murder case?
Yeah, it's certainly not common. I wouldn't say that parents are always involved in these types of cases, interceding on behalf of their children. Although, anecdotally, I can tell you there are enough cases that we know of that I've certainly covered, that we've seen in the public. Maybe you might argue the Gabby Petito case, where parents have gotten somewhat involved. You know, this all depends on the relationship between child and parent. And in this case, it's one of the things that I am so curious about. I would love to know more as a criminologist about the dynamic between Courtney and her parents when Courtney was growing up. I wonder if they were the type of parents who kind of catered to Courtney. Was she a little bit more spoiled? Was she demanding then? Is she a dependent kind of personality with her parents? So I think knowing more about their relationship would explain the type of involvement that they have now. And I hope that information does come out, because we haven't seen much of it yet to date.
Oh, Megan,
And
I think that their parents started off on a really bad foot
Yeah.
because they weren't truthful to the police with their communications. It
Right.
was later discovered that she was talking to the parents before she called 911.
Right.
And then the parents said, no, we hadn't talked to her. And then they saw that they had talked to the right before she called 9. So the police know that the parents wasn't completely truthful in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think it obviously looks very bad for everyone. It is very bad that they had conversations before Courtney called 911 and lengthy conversations. It
Like
doesn't
7 minutes. Yeah.
bode well. It doesn't bode well with me. It wouldn't bode well with anyone to know while this poor man was dying that she's having conversations with her parents. I don't think I understand why that didn't start the case off or the parents off didn't place them in a good light.
Yeah, and these are the parents that you're looking at. It's Kim Dwayne is the father and Deborah Clenney. So they're accused of trying to break into Christian's laptop. And then they texted about it in a group chat. And this group chat wasn't just a chat with the parents and Courtney, but it actually involved the attorneys. And Kim, the father, he's quoted as saying, this direct quote, "Are there any pins/passwords we can try before you see her tomorrow?" Again, this is a quote in a group chat to Courtney's attorneys. Sue Ann, how problematic is that?
Problematic isn't even the word. I mean, you talk about a smoking gun in a case where the parents are their defense, I anticipate will be, hey, listen, we didn't have anything to do with what she did. We were brought in afterwards and we were just trying to help our daughter with legal counsel. I mean, a smoking gun on trying to break into Christian's laptop would absolutely be a communication where they ask for possible PIN numbers or passwords. So I don't know. I mean, they've got several strikes against them. And again, I mean, I hate to repeat it, but it's so important for everyone to understand that this case only was brought back up and reinvestigated at the vehement request and strong advocacy of the parents saying, listen, there's something more to this. Our son didn't commit suicide. This is not just a case that needs to slip through the cracks. Please go back. Please review. Please look at this. And what keeps me up at night as a former prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney absolutely are the cases where the parents don't have the wherewithal to do that. How many cases do we not know where the investigation is minimal? It's just ruled maybe self-inflicted wounds or something like that, where if further investigation was done, the real culprit would come out. It's mind-boggling.
And that's a good point about the parents raising the issue. Tim, I want to get back to you about the attorney's involvement here and the potential problems for them. But first, from Jennifer Jansen, the parents benefited financially from Courtney Clenney's earnings on OnlyFans. Megan, that's definitely a possible motive for why they would want to interfere and get involved, is it not?
It's a motive, but I wouldn't say that's the primary motive here. I think the parents are clearly looking to protect their child. There's always the possibility of a financial motive, but my best guess and everything that I know would tell me that that was not their primary motive in inserting themselves into this investigation and interfering with it. And I think that they do have a lot of problems. And I think there is, as I mentioned earlier, someone had said, especially the defense was saying this is prosecutorial overreach. Well, I think that you could maybe argue that, but on the flip side, these people, like Tim said, they have lied, they've interfered, they've done things to help facilitate, I would say, this crime. I mean, that might be, I might need to stay away from that legally, but their involvement, their involvement, it isn't
Their
good.
alleged involvement.
Their alleged involvement. Yes. Well, I mean, some of it looks, like they have had some involvement, whether or not it's criminal or not, but it's enough to understand why they've been charged along with Courtney, especially if they are helping in any way.
So,
Yala
Joe-
says, if I were doing OnlyFans, my parents would disown me. Those are good parents. They probably maybe should. Nikki Cuds gifting 5 surviving the survivor memberships. Tim Jansen, go right ahead.
So, Joe, as a father of 2 daughters, I hope that his father was not involved with her business where she was making money stripping or whatever she was doing and making a living that way.
Yeah.
Second, this phone call where the attorney's on the phone with the husband, the mother and the father and the daughter. There's no attorney-client privilege anymore, okay? he wasn't representing the husband, a father, and the mother. He may have privilege with his client, but once a third party is there, that privilege is no longer available. There's no daughter-father privilege, and there's no mother-daughter privilege. There's husband and wife, but that could be, so I think this is going to be, they're worried about their own charges, and their behavior is not consistent with a daughter calling and saying, he was strangling me, he was going to kill me, I threw a knife and it hit him. Because the mother would say, call 911. They wouldn't be doing what they're doing, trying to find evidence, trying to get a computer and get a lawyer. I mean, that's my take on it. And I think jurors are going to see this once they hear the autopsy report, how that knife went in, how deep it went in. That's going to be the key to this case. Otherwise, it's just a public relations drama.
As a criminologist, sorry, just want to point out, as
go
a
ahead.
criminologist, when it comes to the parents, we look to explain certain behaviors. And in my head pops the idea of learning theory and differential reinforcement. It seems that the parents support Courtney and reinforce her behavior, whether it's bad, whether it's not. But it might certainly suggest why Courtney was so bold with some of her behaviors, or continued to tell stories, or I think some of her behavior might be explained if you look at the way the parents responded as well.
That's an interesting point. It's all about the dynamic, I suppose. Sue Ann, and I'd like to get Tim's take on this as well. So I was reading a quote. So the father, Kim, is trying to get into the PIN, into the password. And he later figures out the PIN number and then texts, according to these search warrants, he texts the following quote, "Hell yeah, that PIN worked." And then the lawyer responds, "Kim, hold off on going through the computer, please. I don't want to turn you into a witness just yet if you find something useful." Again, isn't this really damning? I'm not an attorney, but what does it say to you as a former prosecutor and a current criminal defense attorney?
I think it absolutely is a problem for there to be, written evidence in text that the father is communicating that he's breaking into the decedent's computer. And the attorney did what the attorney could do, right? Hey, how about you hold off on that there? Because we probably don't want you actually looking at anything that's in there or seeing anything, and then have to testify about something as to how you got the information, since you probably shouldn't have the computer in the first place, but I'm not going to communicate that by text. I'm just going to say, let's back off on jumping into the computer and kind of keep them at bay as best he could. But another smoking gun, saying I got into the computer. I mean, why? And because our criminologist guest brought up the Petito case. If this happened in the Petito case, where the parents actually had something to show that they a piece of evidence and they didn't give that over, it would be a mess. It would have been a bigger mess. So I feel like this family actually having a paper trail for the fact that they had evidence and they were trying to get into it is crazy. The parents shouldn't even be doing that. If they hired legal counsel for her, they should be giving anything they have to the police and having legal counsel advise what needs to be done with what. And that's really a note to all parents. If you want to keep out of that, call legal counsel, make sure your child has the best legal representation possible, and cooperate with the police.
And Tim, just to Sue Ann's point, do you agree with her? I'll read the quote again. The lawyer says, "Kim, hold off on the father." Speaking of the father, says, "Kim, hold off on going through the computer, please. I don't want to turn you into a witness just yet if you find something useful." Does that help the defense attorney's case, or does that show some sort of complicity? I think that Sue Ann was hinting at the fact that the Lisa lawyer is trying to kind of tamp it down and say, hey, stay away from this. But how do you see it?
A better response was, is that your computer? It's not your computer. You have no authority to go in that computer. I'm not giving you authorization to go in that computer. In fact, as a lawyer, I'm not allowed to have you possibly tamper or obstruct with possible evidence, especially in a murder case. course, you don't want this person as a witness. I hope this investigator or this lawyer has a private investigator. That should have been turned over to the police. No one had ownership of it. They were breaking the law, committing a crime by going into it. The lawyer put himself in a really awkward position. Instead of telling him, no, stop, he says, hold off. I would never tell my client, hold off selling that drugs until now. You just can't do that. He's an officer of the court. He should have said, no, you don't have no authority to do that. We'll turn it up. We'll let the police officers know. And certainly you don't want the father of the defendant being a witness. The lawyer may make himself a witness in the case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were witnessing that in the Donna Adelson impending trial, where Dan Rashbaum, there's talk about him being called as a potential witness. But Jody Arrington wants to know, and I'd love to get Sue Ann's take too. Tim, would you take on Courtney as a client? I think someone asked you this before. In light of the incriminating evidence against her as early as the arrest, would you defend someone where you've got a mountain of evidence against you?
You know, we don't decide to take cases based on what the evidence is, right? If you're truly a defense lawyer, you're there to protect their rights and make sure they get a fair trial, make sure they're charged, what they're convicted. Your job is just to make sure the process goes fairly. You don't judge your clients. You try not to judge them like a doctor. You go to a doctor, they don't ask you how you got this. You treat them. So we have a saying in our business, I wouldn't take her case now because no one wants to operate on patients that are half dead. The lawyers have done all this stuff out there, thrown this stuff out there. Now you're coming in the last minute trying to revive this case based on all these, what lawyers have done. Any lawyer would rather come in early and have control of the defendant and the defense. I do get cases sometimes where I take over and you have to live with the hiccups that the prior lawyer had, and it's not fun. It's not easy. But Courtney Clenney is entitled to a defense, a vigorous defense, not an unethical one, not one tried in the media, but a ethical defense, by a lawyer.
Shout out to Analytical Blarney, a friend of the show who has now gifted 5 more Surviving the Survivor memberships. Very generous. Sue Ann, to you, would you take the case? Is this a case that you would touch?
I wouldn't touch it. And the reason why is because I would just think that Courtney Clenney has put herself in a terrible position. And I mean, at this point, initially, if they're calling me at 2:00 in the morning saying, hey, the state attorney has reinvigorated this case and now they're pointing the finger at our daughter, what can you do? Then I think she's in a completely different situation. But I think at this point, the attorney has now made himself a witness in the case. The family has demonstrated that they're prepared to essentially put the attorney in a compromising position because they're having the parents have a conversation that breaks attorney-client privilege. Like, these aren't clients that I want. These aren't the clients that any defense attorney wants. The clients that are going to have you end up with all kinds of ethical violations because they're forcing conversations. First of all, I wouldn't have a WhatsApp 3-way family chat with the parents. I'm going to be consulting and speaking directly with my client. If she wants me to communicate something to her parents, then she can communicate whatever it is to her parents. But even if the parents are the payees, and let's get into the weeds on it, even if the parents are paying the bill, they are not the client. And I'm not going to have a 3-way communication with them about the substantive facts of the case, about getting paid, perhaps, about basic things that aren't going to affect the substantive procedural posture of the case. Absolutely. I went to see her today. She didn't look too good. You guys might want to put a little bit more money on her books. But in terms of, substantive issues on the case, I'm not talking to the clients about that. Her parents on the phone about that. I'm not texting with them about that. We're not having in-person meetings because Courtney is the client. And that's the bottom line. And I think that's kind of where counsel started going off the rails. And it's easy to happen. If you have very involved parents and you're not super experienced, it's easy to go off the rails. But I hope this is a cautionary tale to young lawyers. Hey, listen, the parents can be involved, but you have to focus on who the client is.
It's interesting because Dan Rashbaum told me that Charlie Adelson was the best client he's ever had, and he's tried umpteenth cases. So you never know who a defense attorney is going to like. Megan, back to you, and I know you touched on some of this. Jerry Michael, friend of the show, on here often. Isn't it interesting that we are seeing parents being looked at in these crimes, like the Crumbly case? The dynamics are different. Obviously, there's it's a verdict watch right now. That's a school shooting case. Then we're talking Donna Adelson, the mother, the matriarch, and then these parents. Do you walk down a slippery slope? I mean, at least with Ethan Crumbly, we'll get more into it tomorrow, of kind of defining where a parent's role is in terms of a child's criminal behavior. Gets a little, I don't know.
Does it get murky? Yes. We've often heard that in our field. Do you hold parents responsible for children's behavior? And I talked before about how I thought possibly Courtney's parents, their behavior reinforced Courtney's bad behavior, which I think is a distinct possibility. Now, if their behavior that was non-criminal reinforced it, we don't hold parents responsible. It's very clear, let's just say, in Donna Adelson's case, why she's being charged with crimes. It's also, I think, very clear here why Courtney's parents are being charged with crimes. It's because their activity is illegal. There is a slippery slope that I teach about, and I've looked at when it comes to parents of shooters and mass shooters in particular, like the Crumbly case and what we're seeing being charged. There's been a vilification of parents in the media. Certainly that happened with the parents of the Columbine shooters, with Eric and Dylan. The parents were thought, they were blamed. Do I think we should inherently hold parents guilty for all the acts of their children? No, I don't think that. I think that parents can even be aware of some of the issues their children are having, but not know what to do. Or perhaps they are seeking help for their children. Perhaps there's any number of explanations, but we have to draw the line where the parents' act is actually criminal as defined by the law and how egregious, I guess, those criminal acts are. So I do understand why Crumbly is on trial. But I don't think there should ever be a blanket policy. Absolutely not, that we hold parents responsible for the acts of their children.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances based on different cases. Dylan Klebold's mother, Susan Klebold, is actually supposed to come on this show. It's something I've been working on for a long time, and hopefully we'll get her on. And if we do, we can invite Megan and Amy back because they study the criminal mind. So that'd be an interesting show. Hopefully we'll pull it off. A Busby gifted 5 Surviving the Surviving memberships. Thank you. And then we've got Miss Brazy, friend of the show. The apple never falls far from the tree. My parents would have tried to ground me, even as an adult, if I were in a site like OnlyFans. Hashtag STS Best Guest. So Tim Jansen, just back to the parents now for a minute. So according to prosecutors, there was criminal intent that was apparent here, that we were just talking about, the fact that they were on this basically 4-way WhatsApp chat with these attorneys. What are the realistic repercussions for the parents of that could come from these charges?
Well, they're third-degree felonies, punishable up to 5 years. They probably have no criminal history, I would take it. They're probably looking at probation. I think they're trying to send a message to the parents to stop. I think they're trying to build and break that wall of these people intermingling with each other. It certainly doesn't help Courtney's case, knowing that the parents were illegally trying to get into the victim's computer. That it's up on the wall. The jurors are one on that juror is going to say, that doesn't sound like self-defense. Sounds like just trying to cover up a crime. And no, we don't hold our parents, because you could be a good parent, you could be a bad parent. I've got clients who are great parents, but the kids get addicted to drugs and they can't get them off it. They take them to camps. they go to inpatient, and they just this thirst for drugs, and the parents are at wits' ends. And then finally, the parents, I've had parents say, leave him in jail. I can't do anymore. Let him sit in jail for a while. Maybe that'll work. So, but on the other hand, you got some parents who are not encouraging, but turning a blind eye, giving him money, letting him do things they know is improper. And damages are caused, injuries, and people die. Yeah. If they could have stopped it, or they knew what was about to happen, or they were reckless with a gun, they could be held responsible and should be held responsible.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Sue Ann Robinson hopped on a little late, but I knew she had to jump early. It was short, but sweet. We'll get her back on, obviously. A charismatic attorney. Yala here. Tim, how much of the defense attorney's time is spent managing the client's lunacy? And then another one for you.
Oh, my gosh. If I could tell you the hours I spent with lunatic parents that have unrealistic expectations, that don't understand, and you try to, and maybe that's why I always break things down because I'm so busy telling parents, this is how it works. This is what's going to happen. And because, parents want to help their children. But the legal process is foreign to many people, and mostly parents, because most of them have never been in trouble. Now I get kids whose parents were in trouble. I don't have to explain anything to them. They know this system. They're like, get the best deal you can get for my client. But it's the college kids. The parents are college educated, never been in trouble, and then the kid does a doozy. You spend a lot of time with the family, a lot of time.
By the way, Tim is going to have to bounce, I think, at the top of the hour. And at that point, we'll take some questions for the criminology professor inside the mind of this killer and others. If Megan, if you want to or can stick around for a few extra minutes, we'll take some bonus questions at the end. But this one's back to Tim from Annie K. And please put the questions with those capital Qs. It helps me. Is the arrest of the parents, Tim Jansen, a ploy of some kind by the prosecution to get a more accurate or real confession by Courtney? In other words, are they leaning on her?
They could lean on the parents, but the parents, my understanding, they have money. They're going to get an experienced lawyer. The lawyer's going to tell them, hey, you're not really looking at anything. You're going to get a withhold adjudication if they can prove it. Your charge will probably be after the trial. They'll probably drop it. I think they're just trying to curb their behavior. They may call them as witnesses, or limit them as defense witnesses, right? Because if the defense is going to call them as a witness, right? Well, you're facing charges, aren't you, for going into this victim's computer? Why'd you do that? Was that to help with the self-defense, or was that to help defend your daughter in her defense? It could be very harmful to witnesses, potentially, for the defense.
Right.
Gen X Granny, one of our mods, Joel's dressing for winter in Miami. It did drop below 70 today, and there was a sprinkle out there. And my mink coat is at the dry cleaners, so
oh my gosh,
I had to opt for the hoodie. But yes, my blood has thinned, and I think I've said it before. I have seasonal affect disorder, and if the sun doesn't come out by tomorrow, I might have to cancel all shows until the sun comes back out. But I don't know what's going. It was beautiful on Saturday, and then Sunday it was horrible, and today it was horrible. So I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, I'm freezing. So,
Joel, what does horrible mean to you? I'm just curious.
Well, growing up in Jersey, Megan, you know this firsthand. Every other day in New Jersey is gray or cold.
So I want to know what it means to you to be horrible in Miami.
I expect 6 days a week of sunshine. Anything less than that, and my seasonal affect disorder is triggered, and I have to put on the hoodie. And again, I don't know. I may have to get a fur coat. I'm going to be one of those Miami. There are Miamians. The minute it drops below 70, yeah, I'll be like Elton John. It will be. And by the way, I just want to go on the record because I got hate email about this. I've been sick. Most people know I have COVID, which I'm getting over. But we got a new puppy, Frederick Milton Roosevelt Brown. The M and the R for Mabel Rose. Fred is because our other dog is Ethel. So you got Fred and Ethel, and he's chocolate brown. So there's his name. But I was accused of getting him in my COVID fog. The night we got him, I went to a place called Pet Supermarket to get supplies, like a little cushiony bed, some wee pads, stainless steel bowl. I did not get Fred. I repeat, did not get Fred from a puppy store, a pet store, a puppy mill. It's a breeder I know who raises dogs on a farm in North Carolina. One of the sweetest little puppies I've ever seen, sleeping through the night, occasionally annoying the COE, breaking out of his little home in the middle of the evening like he is in San Quentin, and winding up in odd places. And he's terrified of Ethel, who's being loving, but he finds the small he's not even 2 or 3 pounds yet. But anyway, I did not get him at a pet store. I went to Pet Supermarket to get the supplies, and that's where I saw the chinchilla that I spoke of that was missing a couple of toes. So please don't send me hate mail about that. That drove me crazy. Anyway. And by the way, there was another person today, now that I'm on a tirade, who sent me a 2-star or 1-star review, obviously trying to get under my skin. The one thing you're not going to call me, Brad, and I posted it on Instagram, whatever your name is that I come to these shows unprepared. You can say I'm obnoxious. You can say I'm dumb. You can say, but ill-prepared is not one of them. I spend time preparing for all these shows, and I spend a lot of it. You can ask the COE. So don't come at me with that garbage. Thank you. I'm over that. Megan Sachs, that's a Jersey in me coming out.
I get it.
Yeah, it irritates the crap out of me. Some days the trolls, I just can't take them, but I still love them. But I can't take them. So Kim Wald, we had her on the show. She's actually the civil attorney for Christian Obumseli's family now. And she had a quote. She's coming back on the show next week, but her quote goes as follows. These charges against the Clenney crime family is only confirmation that her parents are the ringleaders of the lies and deceit perpetrated in this case publicly. Now that's a damn kind of like that's harsh, and it comes on the heels of the parents' arrest. Is this just gamesmanship, or do you think this is really just bad blood between these attorneys right now?
This question is for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't know we were directing this one. That's
all yours.
All right. Well, I really can't be sure. I will say that it's become kind of an extreme position calling them, this organized crime family. And I wouldn't exactly say based on the charges that the parents are the ringleaders. They have alleged involvement here. I do think there's bad blood, though, as well. I will say that. I absolutely think that. But I would let Tim answer that one. Probably he could probably answer that better than I could.
Very quickly, I just want to add something. Space Coast, my brother-in-law, the COE's brother, one of the smartest guys I know. He's in the chat. He always is. He's always taking care of the tech side, and he could attest to this. The COE is a beautiful human being with one of the most loving hearts, even though she likes to snap every once in a while. And I'm in stunned disbelief at the crush that she has on downtown Freddie Brown. She's in love with this dog, but I'll tell you why I'm scared. Because Freddie Brown is little, he's tiny, and the COE is loving cuddling him. But the COE, and I'm revealing a lot here, she once had a bird. She once had a bird as a young child, and that bird slept with the COE. And after that night of sleep, the bird was no more. It was accidentally. Its life was snuffed out by the COE, sort of a killer, I guess you could say. And she was 8. I was 8. So I worry.
A killer cuddler.
Yeah, she's a very deep sleeper, but the amount of love that the COE has shown to downtown Fred Brown has been remarkable. I did not know that she's had it in her, but it's amazing to watch. And Canine, Catherine from Maui, buzz off, Brad. These trolls are going to be the end of me. It can be absolute end of me. And then people are going to say, don't give these trolls attention. It's the Jersey in me. I cannot let it go, but I will let it go now. So there you go. Tim Jansen, Frank Prieto, who's the defense attorney, who's making these crazy allegations about, Christian Obumseli, dealing in sex trafficking. He came out with a couple more quotes that I thought were interesting. And he says, and I quote, "I can't explain why these charges were brought to begin with." He's talking about the parents, other than you will have to ask the state attorney's office. And then he talks more broadly and he goes, "We're extremely surprised and very concerned about the arrest of the Clenney family. This could be an example of prosecutorial overreach and misconduct. The Clenneys have quite a story, and it's a story the state of Florida maybe does not want the public to hear." This guy barks, man. He barks loudly, and he's welcome on the show, but he's basically calling out the state here. What do you make of this?
Really bad lawyering. No one really cares about his opinion why the state brought the charges. They brought the charges. He said in court today, the state attorney, she's been there for 25 years. He used to work for her, and a judge used to work for her. So it's their prerogative to bring the charges. He's not representing them. It seems like he's so caught up in the media of this case that he feels he's got to respond. Maybe the euphoria of being popular and media attention has gotten to him. He does not need to be responding to this. He doesn't represent them. And the civil lawyer saying that calling them the crime family, that's a little aggressive. You better have evidence to back that up. Now I know she said it after they got charged. She has no protections. She's damaging their reputation. She could be sued for that kind of conduct. Now, if she says they're criminal, their actions are criminal, what they tried to do, the state attorney, that's one thing. But to call them a crime family, that's over the. She was just as bad as the defense lawyer. I don't know why he feels like he's got to go to the media so much. Is this a Miami thing? You got Dan, now you got this guy. We usually try our cases in courtrooms, not in the media.
Yeah.
In Miami, I feel like they're too busy like clubbing. I never hear from an attorney ever here. I'm surprised they're actually covering this at the local NBC station here in Miami, which is surprising. They never even touched the Adelsons, and they were from South Florida, and that was way more high profile, at least at the point we're at now with that case. But this guy, Frank Prieto, the defense attorney, Megan, back to you on this. He said, and this is another quote that's odd to me. He said there was clear evidence of self-defense, and goes on to say Courtney had no choice but to meet force with force. Yet there appear to be, unless there's something being hidden, absolutely no indication of that. I mean, is he pigeonholing himself in a really bad spot here?
We've definitely seen this before, but yeah, I think so, because he's going to have something big, a big show here. And I don't know that he has it based on the actual crime scene and the incident. What I think he is referring to is I think he's going to try to make a case that it was a pattern. And I do think he's going to pull out whoever he can, whether it's friends of Courtney or other people, as witnesses to say she was afraid. There was an altercation. It was close to this event. So I don't think it's going to have much to do with the evening of the crime. But, he has been talking a big talk here. We'll see what he has to show.
Yeah, he better have something to show for it. Tim Jansen, a couple of details before I know you have to get going. The trial date is still unknown. The state is blaming it on all the defense shenanigans. And the state's also asking for a partial gag order. Do you think that there should be a gag order in place here? The judge is supposed to rule on this tomorrow, by the way.
I told you early on that I thought the state would be filing a motion to impose a gag order. There is no reason why there should not be a gag order. It's clear the defense has not been able to limit their comments to the procedural, non-substantive information. And it's now getting for trial. Now they've got TMZ going to do a docuseries with apparently witnesses in the case. That's just the judge wants a fair trial. I believe that a gag order should be imposed. And both parts, I won't say the state, because all the state did was they did the normal. These are the charges. This what the charges were. They're allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. And he could have come out there and said, we deny it, and we're going to fight this at trial, and we believe we have evidence we're going to succeed at trial. He doesn't need to say any more. He's getting paid. Why does he got to do the media? He's getting paid well, hopefully.
Speak less, do more. Big Apple Hoosier, COE. I'm enjoying my after work red wine as you should in an STS cup. I'm trying to get the COE to work with a different merch store so we can get hats, and the store we have right now doesn't have hats, but the link is still
I gotta
in there.
go, Megan. It was a pleasure.
Tim, you're the man.
Nice to see you, Tim. Nice to meet you.
We'll talk
too.
Shannon Gardner, Tim. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. So it leaves 2 Jerseyans right here. What else could you ask for? What else could you ask for?
I love it, Joel, because you're talking about like I want to let it go, but I can't. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. I want to let it go, but
the only person I know who would be
me too.
Amy would be going nuts too right now. I know.
Oh,
I know
definitely,
Amy would.
definitely.
Yeah.
You know,
Look at
Amy,
this.
Amy takes some of the hate mail more personally than I do. I can let it roll
Yeah.
off me a little bit, but she takes it a little more personal.
Yeah, Amy and I definitely would not take it well. Black Widow comes to us from the Republic of Ireland, and she says that I raise her blood pressure. There you go. Finally, I'm raising someone's blood pressure.
Was that a compliment?
I'm not sure. From her, I think it might be.
Okay.
Black Widow is a character. I love her. She's a character, and I look forward to meeting her one day. So, what do you think about this? Do you think there should be a gag order? You think the judge has to step in here and say, hey, pipe down to both sides?
Yeah, I definitely do. And but I would agree with Tim. I don't think the prosecution's really stepped over the line. I think the prosecution is, you have to do some press. You have to, of course, give the facts, what we're doing, what charges are, things that are official, right? Official charges, official things that are part of the record, proceedings, things of that nature. But I think the defense is the one who's stepping over the line, and it's a bad look. It's a terrible look. It makes things ugly. It taints the process. And I think, as Tim said, you don't try your case in the media. You try it in the courtroom. So yes, I think the judge at this point, I think they should impose a gag order and just keep everything a little neater, a little cleaner, and contained to the courtroom.
Megan, out of curiosity, and there's no one that loves New Jersey more than me, but do you wake up on a February day when it is dreary for the 19th day in a row and say, why the hell do I live in this weather? Do you ever ask yourself that?
I'm not kidding you when I say I ask myself this every day. I'm also not kidding you when I tell my partner, not my crime partner, Amy, but my partner, James, we need to look for an area that's warmer. We need to relocate to somewhere where we can feel the sunshine a little bit more, with the cold. As I get older, I hate to say it, but the cold is starting to bother me more.
It happens. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
And
I know.
that's why half the state has moved down to Florida, or they moved to Arizona. Even
I know.
Arizona.
Yeah.
I joke. I always say that the worst weather in the country is in San Diego because it's never too hot and it's always got a little cool in the air, and people think I'm crazy, but I like it hot. So even in the summer here, when it's like 100 degrees and 100% humidity, I like it. But and I love Jersey because there's nothing more real than Jersey. I could do without the Lambos and the Chanel bags and all that, but it's kind of nice having palm trees in February. But I should probably shut up since the rest of the country right now, it's February. How about that? New Mexico has over 300 days of sunshine. This is a true story. One of my best friends in the world is Matthew Nelson Broad, otherwise known as Matt Broad. And Matt Broad is the chief meteorologist for KVOA in Tucson, Arizona. But he grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and his only dream in life ever was to be in cold weather. He is obsessed about being in cold weather, and he works in Tucson. When he first started off, his first weather job was Duluth, Minnesota, where he had to use a blowtorch to melt his car door thing to get the key in. And all he wants to do is move back to Duluth. So it's weird how different people have. If I lived in Duluth, I wouldn't be alive very long. Let's put it that way.
You'd be miserable. We get
it. I would be. So, Megan, there was an interesting story that NBC News has reported. And now is the time, by the way, if you have questions for criminologist Megan Sachs, give me the triple Qs and we will ask questions. NBC News reported, this is a disturbing story, that Courtney Clenney, who was awaiting these murder charges, and still was not in jail, I guess, at the time. She's from Austin, and she was living there. She meets a teenager on a street in her neighborhood. By the way, she moved back and she bought herself $1 million home because she's got a lot of money from OnlyFans. So she meets this teenager in this neighborhood, and she says to the teenager, "Kiss me." And he declines, and he's a teenager, so he gets a little nervous. And she responds by screaming at him in a drunken rage. This is all according to the father now. "I'm going to burn your house," is what Courtney Clenney says to this teenager. "I'm going to burn that S down." At that point, when she says that to him, and again, this is a story from NBC News, a legitimate media outlet. This is a quote from the father. The father says he showed up because the son called, and then she freaked out. Direct quote. "She approached me. She started slapping me as I was standing between her and my son." Assuming that this is a true story because NBC News ran it, and these quotes are attributable to the father. What do you make of this behavior, especially in light of the fact that this is after the murder?
Right. So, I mean, I definitely would say, even though NBC's credible, this is what one side is alleging. So, you have to take that with a grain of salt. So, I'll just go on the information reported here. It doesn't surprise me one bit to hear that. I don't believe that Courtney, I believe that we're going to, I don't know if you'll hear about it in trial, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if you heard from previous partners, acquaintances, friends that she's been abusive or violent before. And I certainly wouldn't expect her violence to necessarily stop. You would think it would be a good deterrent, which we talk about in our field a lot, right? To be charged with a second-degree murder. However, if this is part of her pattern, if she is abusive, if she has a temper that she cannot control. Also, I'd like to say we don't blame it on alcohol, but I know that alcohol abuse was also part of her problem. Alcohol inflames these situations. So if she was also drinking, it doesn't surprise me one bit that she would resort back to this type of behavior. It's
Yeah, and
terrifying.
when
It really
she
is
was
scary when you think about it.
it's super scary. And I know a guy, a very good friend of mine, that was in a somewhat similar relationship, and it's the dynamic is generally, I think men have a tougher time being believed,
They
or
do.
it's just kind of blown off as oh, you're a wuss or whatever. It's like it's joked about, but it's scary. I saw some switches flipped in that relationship from the female side, and it was frightening.
That's something we
From
talk about, Joel, sorry, a lot also
Yeah.
in my courses and in our field, the narrative of domestic violence. Don't get me wrong, the percentages, the numbers are certainly higher in terms of victimization in females. But one of the reasons for that is that males don't report and females don't report either for various reasons. But with males, there's this stigma, there's this shame, there's nobody would believe that, or, there's so many things that accompany males not reporting and it not being taken seriously. So I think this case, while absolutely tragic and avoidable, at least opens a very good public dialogue about males as victims and their rights and what, the defense should be for them as well. Putting that out there for people to talk about and to digest and understand.
That's a great point, and I think that is very important. The father goes on to tell NBC News about Courtney Clenney after she slaps the father. "I will tell you that person is aggressive. That person is inclined to hurt somebody, especially when she's under the influence. I'm not a judge or a jury, but I can tell you this person is disturbed. She's a menace," the father says. And it's a good time to remind people that Courtney Clenney was arrested at a rehab facility, I believe in Hawaii, for alcoholism. She also said that she was suffering from PTSD. So it is obviously a bunch of different things that are influencing her behavior. None of which are being condoned, but she's obviously got a lot going on. Pam Coggin to Megan, which case hurled you into podcasting? Which case has hit you the hardest?
The case that hurled me into podcasting was the Melanie McGuire case, and that happened here in New Jersey. And Melanie was convicted of the murder and dismemberment of her husband. And it was an extremely salacious case. It involved an affair, a beautiful defendant, a young couple, this unbelievable murder. And it also involved a defendant who has always maintained her innocence and reached out with some hopes of someone covering her story, giving it some attention. And so that case was the first one to put me into podcasting. So that was Direct Appeal, the podcast that we did, where we literally looked at, Melanie's direct appeal, both literally and figuratively, I guess, in the courts and to the public. That case fascinated me. What happened after that was that a lot of people wrote in and they really wanted to hear cases about females in different ways, as offenders, as victims, as possible wrongful convictions. And so that's what kind of got us onto women in crime, trying to cover different cases. There are ones that stick with me in terms of there's different reasons why. There are ones that almost hurt my feelings, that still make me very, very sad. The case of Shannon Christian and her boyfriend Chris Newsom, their violent abductions and murders. Really, I had such a hard time covering that case, and it's stuck with me ever since. And I think about them all the time. There are other cases that maybe inspire you. They inspire somewhat of a change. So even if they're tragic, they can have a possible silver lining. I would say a lot of them stick with me, to be honest. And then there's just ones that I remember from when I was young. The Jennifer Levin case has always stayed with me. Jennifer Levin, who was murdered in Manhattan, by
killer.
Robert Chambers, the preppy killer. That one's always stayed with me because of the victim blaming that happened in that case. And her case, though, helps move the ball forward. So they all hit you for different reasons and stay with you for different reasons. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, and Megan and Amy are two of the best, and from Jersey,
Joel.
so you can't beat it. Brooklyn here. Joel, I live in North Dakota. We just had cold in the -30s. Makes you grow thick skin. Love the show. I will prefer to not grow thick skin. Here's a question from PSS, our friend the surgeon. If there wasn't so much video evidence of Courtney Clenney being abusive, where do you think the court of public opinion would rule here, Megan? Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there'd be a tendency, unfortunately, to view Courtney as a victim because she's a female. I think there are also, issues in this case, frankly, of race that are going to, race is kind of insinuated into a lot of cases. And I think sometimes rightfully so, and sometimes wrongfully so. Sometimes race is just a demographic or a characteristic of people involved. In this case, it did seem in the videos that part of Courtney's abuse was to use racial slurs and denigrations to demean her victim and make him feel badly, verbally, emotionally, mentally. So I think that unfortunately, we are still in a time where without any video evidence coming off the bat, there would be a belief probably that a smaller white female would be more likely to be victimized by a larger black male. Unfortunately, I do think that.
Yeah, and she's also, I think, accused of giving, I think her boyfriend was like Mr. Olympia and giving him a concussion, like punching him in the head. And so there's other stories out there. The thing that's to me that just jumps out at me on this case, Megan, is the night of the murder, she tells investigators that she quote unquote flung the knife from 10 feet away, like some kind of ninja. The medical examiner said there's just no way, but isn't that weird? I mean, this thought of basically being, at some weird angle from 10 feet away and you're just going to chuck a knife, like very odd. It stands out to me. I don't know if it does for you.
People make irrational decisions when they have what we call like bounded rationality. Like when they need to come up with a quick explanation or a shortcut, maybe in her head very quickly, she just didn't want to connect herself to the knife to him directly. Maybe she thought this allows me a degree of separation from the actual crime, right? I'm not stabbing him directly, I'm throwing something.
Mhm.
There's any number of reasons that people would offer what seem like somewhat ridiculous explanations, as this one does seem, and as this one's going to be so hard to support if that's what the defense stays with. So when you're in a state of irrationality, it's really hard to offer a perfectly rational explanation. But this one's going to be a doozy.
Yeah. Jonathan Judd with another interesting question. With the videos already out there showing Courtney attacking Christian, why hasn't the defense attorney released any video showing Christian as the attacker? I mean, I got to ask you, Megan, do you believe that that
Yeah.
video even exists?
No, I don't. I could be completely wrong, but I think that the reason it's not out there is because I don't think it exists. There's a lot of video that was captured here, more so than we've seen in some other cases. But my sneaking suspicion tells me if there is video with Christian, it's going to be similar to one that I saw earlier today. And that was an argument that they had in Colorado where she's attacking him. She's physically attacking him. She's hitting him. And the most I can see him doing is, pushing her back and also kind of holding her, trying to control her, I think, in terms of controlling her violence towards him. So I suspect that those are the kind of videos, if the defense has, we'll see. But I don't think it moves the ball forward for them right now in the press because it's not, I don't think what they have is going to show Christian as an aggressor.
Hmm.
That remains to be seen, though. Frankly, that remains to be seen in court. And maybe, maybe the defense team, who seems to be doing a lot of press, is holding on to some of the videos that they have for the courtroom. But I just have a feeling they don't have anything quite as damning as what we've seen on Courtney as the abuser.
And then one of the final things I wanted to just go over, this is sort of eyewitness reports from the building. I think I was saying the COE
Right.
and I have a couple friend that was actually living in this building. It's known for being, loud. It's in a hip area of Miami where everyone's partying at all hours of the night. But a neighbor basically came forward and said that the yelling and the screaming coming from the apartment was almost too much to take. And described it as domestic violence. His name is Aiden Nisvisky. Does it surprise you that there were these reports out there of this?
No, it's no surprise. I will say some abusers are very careful to keep things quiet behind closed doors. They are more methodical. Courtney does not seem like one of those. Their arguments got heated quickly. They are very loud. There's hitting. It's probably on off hours. So I'm not surprised to hear that. And I wasn't surprised to hear, I don't know if this is actually true, but that the building was moving to evict her because of these numerous complaints. It's just unfortunate that out of all these complaints, there was no intervention that could have saved his life because I think it's possible that there could have been. And that becomes a theme in these cases of abuse that escalate as well.
Yeah, and it seems to have no end, and it also seems to be stuff that's been going on since the beginning of time. But Mrs. Jim Morrison, a couple more questions. Do you think they're going to demonstrate? This is interesting. A knife throwing performance. I would love to see how Courtney can land and throw. They did talk about this knife expert. You think that's something we would see in court, Megan?
Listen, the knife expert is kind of a new expert for me. So you do see demonstrations in court. You also see video demonstrations. So where things are tested kind of in a laboratory or more scientifically. At times you will see that. I don't think you're going to see a demonstration in court, but we'll see if the judge allows anything that they've assembled ahead of time, whether it's graphics or whether it's video. I'm not sure how scientific that would be, though. So I don't know. It's anyone's guess on that. Like I said, this is completely new to me in this piece of testimony and the evidence that they are going to offer to support it.
And Megan, I think you touched on this, but maybe not as directly as this question is asking. Can you please comment on someone like Courtney Clenney, whose default interactions are violent tantrums and abusive acting out, that's what they turn to? What does it tell you about that person?
Yeah, someone like that typically has what we call low self-control, and whether you believe that that is instilled or something born with or bred with, that's a big argument in our field. But people with low self-control have factors such as impulsivity, um, short-term planning, so no real ability for long-term. They have self-centeredness, a need to be the center of attention, and they are quick to anger, very demonstrable tempers that rise quickly. So Courtney's attributes remind me of someone with low self-control. I almost think she fits the T. The question is, was Courtney, and this is the big one, was Courtney kind of born this way, or was there a shaping of this in her, external? Was it environmental?
Hmm. Um, Megan, you and I are lucky. We're missing some of the chat drama. Bonnie Lee Lopez says it best. Why don't the trolls save their nastiness for another channel? This channel is a positive vibe. Please, let's keep it that way. Agreed.
I agree.
It's amazing what goes on when it doesn't need to go on. Texas 1836. I know you're not a therapist, but does it sound
Mhm.
like borderline personality disorder here?
So borderline personality disorder definitely has features. There's unstable relationships. There is unstable moods, mood swings. There are characteristics that would match up with borderline personality. I'm not sure if I've seen clearer cases, let's put it that way, where I would know offhand immediately, okay, that's someone is very clearly borderline. I think it's a possibility though, and it's a good question.
Mm. And look at this from Ned Smith. I finally figured out a super chat, not a super sticker, because there's a chat. I never knew the difference. Joel, I'm glad you're on the men. Great guest, and congrats on your new adorable puppy. Speaking of that, that's downtown Fred Brown.
Oh my gosh, get out, so
That's
cute.
downtown Fred Brown. That's
I
my
love the
son.
nickname, Downtown Fred Brown. It's great.
Yeah. Look at his eyes in the middle. He's got like bluish, crazy eyes, and that's my
Adorable.
little Z bugs on the right. And this is Vita
Oh,
Aaliyah, who's a 9-year-old going on 27. But look at
aren't they
downtown
all?
Fred Brown's eyes.
Yeah,
This is,
beautiful.
by the way, this is causing a lot of drama in the chat. I think people want me to go to Mars and get a dog up in Mars where there's no one that is more of a proponent of humane treatment of animals. If a farm isn't good enough, then I'm sorry. I apologize. What can I tell you?
Well, it looks like your dog's getting a lot of love in your home, Joel.
She sure is. And even Ethel, our boxer, Fred and Ethel.
I love
Look
it.
at this. Thank you, the CEO. Look at this. I got your back. That's what you want from a wife. I got your back. Done with trolls. We screw the trolls. And you know what? As we grow, it's going to get worse. So everyone buckle up. From the surgeon, Megan, you're awesome. Love your jersey too. Best guess. She's from Philly, if you couldn't tell by her name, but Philly jersey, same kind of attitude. So cute. There you go. A
Thank
big
you.
thank you to Sue Ann Robinson, who joined us for a short time today. She's an attorney out of Fort Lauderdale. And of course, Tim Jansen, who everyone knows, guy gives amazing legal analysis. He was on, he had a run. He also served 5 years as a federal prosecutor. And then you've got Megan Sachs from the great state of New Jersey, a full professor of criminology and the graduate program director at Fairleigh Dickinson University. She teaches classes including women in crime, serial killers, and crime policy. And she and Amy host Women in Crime and Direct Appeal. And I ordered Fred an AirTag. It's coming. Should be here. He's too little for it right now.
I know.
And what's crazy is tonight, Amy was going to be on the show, but I found out from Megan, she's teaching at Rahway State Prison. And that is
Correct.
one of our crowd knows how scared I am of prisons, Megan. There is no, if you've never seen Rahway State Prison, Google it. It is out of a horror movie. It's got this dark black dome. sits by Newark Airport. It's always dirty and gray and scary. But look at this. Lauren and Mackenzie just subbed to your channel. So everyone check out and support Megan and Amy. They do great work over there. Thank you to all our best guests. Sorry for losing my or finding my Jersey attitude. I should say we are close to 100,000 subscribers. I think we're closing in on someone just had it there. Where was it? I just saw it. We are closing in. We're less than 1,000 away from 100,000. We will get there in due time. Yeah. Tomorrow. Thank you so much. We're going to cover this Crumbly case about the mother on trial for her son's school shooting. And we've got a guy that responded to a school shooting who now has software to prevent school shootings. He is among our guests tomorrow. Shanna Gardner is back in court on Wednesday. And then at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, you've got Dr. G breaking down Michelle Troconis's body language. So until then, love you, America, and love you, Jersey, and love you, Jersey diners. See you tomorrow.